I call this Operation Dirtbag because these individuals were not just sex offenders, they targeted children. That line set the tone for a 10-day push that ended with more than 230 arrests across Florida. But slogans don't make arrests. Systems do. In the next minutes, we unfold how 287G partnerships turned local traffic stops, jail checks, and address compliance checks into removals focused on people with convictions like battery, attempted homicide, and child exploitation. Then the counter voices. Prayers outside immigration courts and the civil liberties concerns fueling a community divide. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The surge clock started on October 25th because the lists were finally ready. Not broad names on a clipboard, specific people tied to post-release failures, final removal orders, and convictions flagged inside ICE's criminal alien program. Statewide made more sense than city by city. Addresses and compliance checks cross county lines. Sex offender registry updates don't respect a city boundary. A statewide push prevented suspects from slipping to the next jurisdiction after the first knock. Officials framed the trigger around 3 buckets. People who skipped required check-ins after release, those with standing removal orders, and offenders tied to violent or sexual crime convictions. That focus list shaped the first briefings. Analysts had run through jail rosters, probation updates, and registry hits looking for non-compliance leads weren't soft. They were addresses, phone numbers, and case notes tagged by priority, with a heavy tilt toward crimes against children. On paper, it looked like a tight sweep. In the streets, advocates warned the net would land wider than advertised and spook immigrant neighborhoods. Field reports told a more granular story. Officers knocking at known addresses before dawn, jail interview rooms booked solid, and patrols carrying BOLO cards for named offenders tied to missed updates. The watchwords were narrow targets and fast transfers, even as protests formed outside courthouses. DHS fused data streams to build a matrix that set the pace. Sex offender registries flagged missed address changes. 287G jail screenings added fresh fingerprints and charge histories from county bookings. Address change violations and removal orders were layered in, so a missed update plus a prior conviction could push a name to the top. The result wasn't a single list. It was a live dashboard sorted by risk, compliance status, and last known location. The legal backbone sat inside county jails. Through 287G deputization, select deputies ran immigration checks during booking and classification. That meant a local arrest could trigger a federal detainer before a defendant posted bond. The pipeline moved in hours when the paperwork lined up. Jail intake, 287G interview, database confirmation, detainer, and handoff. Day 1 opened with fusion center briefings and deconfliction calls. Supervisors pushed BOLO lists to patrol units and warrant squads, while jail commanders expanded interview blocks to capture overnight arrests. Day 2 shifted to confirmation. Field teams conducted door knocks tied to compliance failures, and jail staff verified fingerprints against prior convictions. Day 3 stacked transfers. Midday vans ferried detainees with final orders, while late afternoon teams served warrants on top-tier targets flagged for sexual crimes. The named cases showed the profile that sat near the top. Sergio Velázquez Carnero from Cuba carried a conviction for fondling a child. Victor Julio Silva Diaz from Venezuela was convicted of aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a child. Vladimir Garcia from Cuba had lewd and lascivious battery on a child. These weren't unknowns. Their case files already contained registry requirements, prior court dates, and removal histories that made verification fast. The daily tempo leveled into a rhythm. Before sunrise, teams ran address checks tied to missed registry updates. By noon, jail transfers moved people with confirmed removal orders to ICE custody late day. Warrant service units hit clustered addresses to reduce tip-offs. Compressing a month of work into 10 days came from that cadence. Repeatable steps, tight communications, and lists that refreshed as new jail bookings fed the matrix. By the end, more than 230 arrests landed, and officials said 150 were sexual predators. That tally matched the architecture, a matrix driven by post-release failures and prior convictions rather than random sweeps. But numbers don't explain speed. The secret was how local uniforms and federal badges moved as one, passing leads, matching prints, and closing loops without losing a day. Speed came from structure. ICE enforcement and removal operations set the targets. Field offices sorted the leads by risk, and county sheriffs with 2 87G units handled the choke points inside jails. Task forces moved on addresses tied to missed check-ins and registry violations. That chain meant a traffic stop, a booking, or a compliance knock could trigger the same outcome. A detainer, a handoff, and a ride to federal custody. With that map in place, a few dozen deputized officers didn't need to be everywhere. They needed to be in the right places, at the right hours, with verified names. Critics said that kind of coordination blurs lines and puts community policing on the same track as immigration enforcement. Officials countered that precision is the point, and that the targets had defined histories tied to violent or sexual offenses in legal orders already on file. The argument played out at the courthouse steps while the workflow kept moving. Each handoff ran on documented triggers, missed address updates, final removal orders, or failures to comply after release. So cases advanced without waiting for new investigations. Here's how a stop becomes a custody transfer. A patrol unit runs a plate, learns the driver is a registered sex offender, and checks whether the offender updated a new address. The record shows a missed update. A 287G officer confirms an outstanding removal order through the shared system. That confirmation allows an ICE detainer. The driver exits the scene in local custody, but the clock is already ticking. Booking starts a second layer of checks, so the same case travels 2 tracks that end in the same place. Jail intake is where the pipeline tightens. Booking staff cross-check fingerprints against state and federal files. 287G officers interview the individual, verify prior convictions, and confirm identity and status through the program's access. When the match hits, they notify ICE for an immediate hold. The timing matters. If a defendant could post bond within hours, the detainer needs to beat the release. During the surge, interview blocks ran longer and data pulls happened in parallel to stop gaps where people might walk before confirmation. The tech stack kept the tempo steady. Shared databases linked jail consoles to field offices. Deconfliction calls sorted overlapping targets so 2 teams didn't hit the same address or burn a lead. Rolling arrest teams worked county clusters, clearing names in one zone before moving to the next to reduce tip-offs. When a new jail booking hit a match, the dashboard refreshed and the route changed. Vans shifted, warrants moved up, and the next address fell into the queue without waiting for a weekly cycle. Concrete cases grounded the effort. Convictions such as aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a child and sexual battery pushed names high in the queue. Nationalities varied, Cuba, Venezuela, and others, supporting the stated emphasis on criminal history and legal status rather than a single origin or neighborhood. Officials framed it bluntly. These individuals were not just sex offenders. They targeted children. That line set the tone for fast-track moves after sentences were served and compliance failures surfaced. By day 10, the pipeline from a compliance check to custody held its form. Arrests concentrated on people with violent or sexual crime histories who carried final removal orders or fresh violations. The volume wasn't an accident. It was the byproduct of synchronized rolls, rapid checks, and county-by-county clearing operations that kept leads hot precision for some, pressure for others. Outside the courthouses, a different story formed. Operation Dirtbag showed what happens when law, data, and coordination compress weeks into days. The framework, 287G, compliance checks, and shared dashboards, delivered arrests fast, but it also deepened a split over safety versus stigma. Some see a precise tool against dangerous offenders. Others warn about ripple effects in immigrant neighborhoods. Tell us if this model should scale nationwide or be narrowed with tighter safeguards. What protections or metrics would you demand? Error rates, public reports, community review, audit trails? Next, we unpack the after-arrest track. Detention placements, court calendars, bond decisions, and how quickly a final removal order actually moves.